When Jesus first ascended, the church had a tough time getting started in Jerusalem. That's where they were. They hadn't really branched out to the Gentiles yet and anything like that, but it was tough. It was tough to try to get the word of Christ around to people without Christ. Christ had he had a thing, he had a good thing going. And he did, he was on doing his thing, and then he got hung on the thing, and then he rose from the thing, and then he just ascended to the thing. And then there's the other people that are going, we got to keep this thing going. And that's what they did. But it was tough. And the main thing that was tough about it was not just trying to convince people that God loved them. Believe it or not, that was a tough sell, just as it is today. It's a tough sell to tell people that Christ represents love. That is a tough thing. You will find people that will argue on it. They will call you names, all kinds of stuff. And in the first century, they took it one step further. They would threaten to kill you. And in one place, they did. There was a person named Stephen, and he was one of the first early disciples. He was one of the first they called deacons of the time. And he was wonderful. He was young, and he was just had a lot of things going for him. But they didn't like what he was preaching. They didn't like that message of love. And they stoned him to death. Standing next to the people as they were stoning him to death was a man named Saul. Saul was a Pharisee, and Saul approved and enjoyed the fact that this guy was getting stoned to death. He was holding the jackets and the coats, He was holding the cloak things, that they wore then. He was holding all those so that they could have a better aim and use their arms and really hurt this guy. And he was enjoying it. Now, this is not, when you get to a point where you have a religious feeling and you feel called by that feeling, that faith that you have, if that starts to tinker from loving your neighbor to killing, you are worshiping something else. And Saul was all about worshiping something else. He didn't realize it. He was saying that he was worshiping the same thing that his generations had done for years. He had worshiped the Old Testament, as it were, the Torah, the law. But he was given in to so much hatred that he despised this new movement, this Jesus movement. At the time, they weren't called Christians. At the time, they were known as the Way. The Way. If you need help, I will show you the way. If you want to be loved, I will show you the way. This is the movement, and this was the movement that Saul could not stand. He wanted so much so. Some people just, they think, oh, that's icky, I don't like you, and all that kind of stuff. Saul had a fire in him. He wanted them eradicated from the earth. He wanted this new movement of Jesus followers gone, so much so that he celebrated the fact that they murdered one of them. He went to the high priest and he asked permission to hunt members of the Way. I say hunt because that's exactly what they were doing. He got permission and a bunch of henchmen behind him to be able to go into synagogues, places of worship, and hunt down people that were following Jesus Christ. If he saw them breaking bread or anything like that, he would bind them, women, men, everybody, bind them, march them to Jerusalem, and imprison them. That's what he felt his purpose was in life. And he got so bad about it that the reputation got so bad that the original 12 kind of hunkered down in Jerusalem, but the rest of the people of the Way, they scattered and they started to move about and they started to worship in secrecy because of this man named Saul. They knew that he was not to be reckoned with. They knew that he was somebody that would tear them apart. And so they started to meet in secret homes. That didn't stop Saul. He would go with his little henchmen, and they would go door to door, and they would kick those doors down. And if they saw anything that resembled worshiping of Jesus Christ, they would bound the people, and they would march them to prison. But Jerusalem was not a big enough place for him. He knew that they were spreading out. And to him, it was like eradicating cockroaches. He wanted to go wherever they were. And he went back to the religious leaders and he said, I need permission to expand. Because as a Pharisee, he didn't have legal rights. He had political influence, but he needed permission. And the high priest gave him that permission to go and hunt people. The first place on his list was a place called Damascus. It was about a 3-day journey. They got their horses, they got their henchmen, they got all of these people, they got their weaponry, they got everything they could to hunt down Christians. And Saul, for that 3 days, you know that he is just filling full of excitement. He's actually excited to hunt people down. He's actually excited to rip families apart. He's actually excited, getting a rush, thinking about busting those doors open, surprising people, and taking them away. This is the fire that's in his soul. And I can tell you, it has nothing to do with God. Nothing to do with God. But to him, that's what he was all about. In the name of God, I will hunt down the way. But something happened just outside of Damascus. He was about ready to go into the town when suddenly a huge light, brighter than anything that they ever saw, surrounded him and his men. So much so that it knocked Saul on his butt. He was down and he could not see anything, but he heard a voice. And the voice said, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? He said, who is this Lord? Now, Lord was kind of a common name back then. Who is this? And he said, this is Jesus, the one you are persecuting. By that very message, he wasn't saying, Saul, knock it off. He wasn't saying, Saul, stop picking on my people. He was saying, when you attack love, when you break people apart, when you do this kind of stuff, you are attacking me. You are attacking me. Remember that. When we attack love, we are attacking and persecuting Christ. And that's exactly what happened. And Saul hears this message, and he is astonished. The people around him, his henchmen, are astonished. They can't see anything. There's just this light. They hear the voice. And he says, what am I to do? And Jesus says, go, continue your walk to Damascus, and then I will instruct you what to do then. Now this, if you're writing a screenplay, this is where you change the script. Jesus, he met Jesus. It knocked him on his butt. In the movies, Jesus would have gone and take that, and then he would, put him in things and all that kind of stuff. The Christians would be celebrating. There'd be a holiday named after him, and all that kind of stuff. But he says, I got work for you to do. To the one that is persecuting him, he turns the tables and says, I got work for you to do. Go to Damascus and wait. Saul gets up and he realizes he can't see a thing. He is completely blind. He no longer now sees a light. He sees utter darkness. The people around him have to guide him back into Damascus, where he finds himself in a home. And for 3 days, he sits there, not eating, not drinking, not doing anything. He is terrified and he is moved by this experience that he just had. And he can't see a darn thing. And he just sits there. People that knew him probably were worried about him. They didn't know what to think about him. They didn't know what was happening. Imagine you couldn't eat or drink because you were so affected by what happened to you. Meanwhile, over in Damascus, there's an innocent guy. Bless you. Was that a sneeze? Okay. It's a funny sounding sneeze. There's a guy named Ananias. Ananias is one of the way. He is a faithful disciple of Jesus Christ. So faithful that he's just sitting there and he hears a voice, Ananias. And instead of falling down or denying it, Ananias just goes, I am here, Lord. I am here. Imagine having that much faith that when you hear something like that, when something comes to you, when you feel the presence of Christ, that your reaction is, I'm here. For me, it would have been, check my medication. But for him, I'm here. And Jesus says, I've got a job for you to do. I need you to go to a street called Straight Street. And I need you to go to a house of Judas. Judas was kind of a common name then. Inside that house, you're going to find a man from Tarsus. His name is Saul. He's praying right now. And in his prayer, he is seeing a vision of a man named Ananias coming into the house, laying hands on him and curing him of his blindness. Now, that's all fine and game. You say, okay, I'm here, Lord. You know, when we say, I'm here, Lord, what does that usually mean? I want you to do this Bible study. I want you to do this. I want you to give to this. It doesn't mean I want you to go alone, unarmed, into a house of a Christian hunter. Ananias says, question. We've heard of this guy. That's why we're all in hiding. This guy's evil. And he actually says, to describe him, evil. This is the guy that has persecuted, hunted, and murdered us. You sure you want me to go there? Jesus says, don't worry about it. I've got a plan for him. I've got a plan for him. He is going to spread my message to the Gentiles. He's going to spread it to kings. And don't worry. It's not going to be easy for him either. Now, Ananias might have gotten a little bit of satisfaction out of that last part, but imagine that walk to Straight Street. Straight Street. How many times would he want to make a curve off of Straight Street? But Jesus is basically saying, go straight there. Imagine that walk. He doesn't know what he's going to find out. Does he walk in? Does he find a bunch of henchmen there? Does he see this man named Saul that has persecuted them time and time again? Does he see the enemy of the church, the biggest enemy of the time of that church? Jesus said he had plans for Saul. Does he have plans for Ananias, or is this it for Ananias? But he goes on faith. What do you think he was struggling with on the way there? Imagine thinking of people that you can't stand, people that have been a threat for you, people that have harmed people that you know. Is he going there excited? Or is he going there going, I don't know if I can do this. I don't like this man. I do not like this man. But because Jesus called him, just because of that, he goes. He opens the door, and there he is, the one that is notorious, Saul, the one that has taken part in the murder of Stephen, the one who has persecuted and separated families and caused a real legitimate threat to the way. And there he is, sitting there alone, blind. Now again, if you're writing the movies, this is where you'd go, Saul, I am Ananias. This is what you've done. I've got a couple of things to tell you about and all of this kind of stuff, and I kick you. Ooh, who's punching you now? Who's punching you now? I'm going to move the furniture around now. Try to work around. See what you can do there. Yeah, these your donuts? Oh, I'm eating your donuts. I'm eating your donuts. Doesn't go that way. Instead, he opens the door. He goes straight to Saul, and he puts his hands on him. And he says something that is, when I read it, it makes my heart jump. He says, Brother Saul. Brother. Brother was not a common name. We just said Judas was a common name. We just said that calling people Lord was kind of a common thing. Brother really meant you were either a blood brother or you were part of the family of faith. Immediately, because of Christ calling him, he puts his hands on him, and the very first thing he says to him is, brother. Imagine the humility that he had to conjure up. Imagine the self-pride that he had to extinguish, the very nature of all of the anger, all of the fear, and he had the faith enough to say, brother. And he put his hands on Saul. And it was almost as if these scales fell. And for the first time, Saul, in 3 days, could see. And the first thing he sees is a person that he would have hunted 3 days ago. A person that he would have not have batted an eye, that he would have celebrated the killing of him. But instead, he sees somebody that was once his enemy, healing him and calling him family. It said right then and there, Ananias sat with Saul and baptized him. Baptizing is a big deal in our little church stuff. It means the acceptance into the family of Jesus Christ. It means wanting to be part of that family. Before he was even baptized, Ananias referred to him as a member of that family and welcomed him in. And he was baptized, and for the first time in 3 days, he ate. He ate and he drank, and he started to change his life. Later on down the road, he would change his name from Saul. He would be known as Paul. Not a big leap. I mean, if you're really comparing, Didn't you used to be Saul? Oh, no, I'm Paul. Oh, that's really convincing. But he changed it because he changed who he was. Some of the earliest letters of anything in the Bible that we have from the New Testament comes from the letters of Saul because he had planted churches. He did go out and reach the Gentiles. He did go out and speak to kings. He did everything that he could, and it wasn't easy for him. But what started that journey is because God knocked him on his bottom, told him how blind he was. He was so filled with hatred, he could not see Christ in front of him. But the thing that I think that kept him going was something that I think is, as a church, I think this is the true beginning. When somebody that you disagree with, somebody that you once hated, you call them family. That's why we're here. That's why we are here. If you want to model for the church, that's it. It has nothing to do with guys that wear the gowny things and all that kind of stuff. It has nothing to do with this. It looks nice. I decorated this myself. But it doesn't have anything to do with any of this stuff. It has to do with people coming in with differences, different walks of life, different cultures, all that kind of stuff, and being able to forgive because they take Christ first, their differences second. We sit down and we celebrate the love of Jesus Christ. That's why we're here. Let Christ have the faith. Do we have the faith in Christ that we can work out our differences and that we can see eye to eye, that we can break bread together, that we can see each other? Do we have the faith to take Jesus first and our hatred second? Because if we take Jesus first, we may find that our hatred dissolves, just as it did for Ananias. Can we celebrate our love and our compassion for Christ without keeping the door closed to people that have differences? The bravest thing that Ananias did is he opened the door to that house, not knowing what was on the other side, but knowing that Jesus had called him to love his neighbor, and that neighbor in front of him was once his enemy. Can we do that? When's the last time you sat with somebody that disagreed with you? That's why I love this church. I love this church. I go to other people and they talk about, that they preach to people on this side of the spectrum, or this side, or whatever the case may be. And I say, we have people of all different kinds and, different political views and all that kind of stuff. And we sit together and it blows their mind. We are in the house of Judas right now. Don't misquote that. It could sound bad. But we are in the house because we open that door and we sit with our differences and we love each other. That's why church is so important. We are connecting with them carrying the torch of love to generation, to let them know that in evil times, in ugly times, Christ still is love. Coming to church is fun. It's great. It's rewarding. It's also a huge responsibility. We are delegates. We are part of that royal priesthood of people to carry that message forward and to share that love. And we don't get to pick who we get to share it with. Christ tells us who to share it with. And as long as that door is open, we share it with anybody that walks in there. That's what's amazing about this church. That's why church is so important. I wish people, it seems, I don't know if you guys have been watching the news, but it seems like in the government we have a little tit-or-tat with going on right now with people that don't want to meet together. I'd love to invite them here. I'd love to let them see what's happening here. There's a camera right there. Hey, senators, people, whatever, people with ties, white shirts, you're not seeing eye to eye. And I get that. There's differences. But none of them are resolved when we refuse to even speak to each other, when we continue to just fight back and forth. We have people on both teams that say that they follow this. They say that they follow this. Well, in this is something that's amazing. The villain sits down. They break bread together. And they start growing the church. Can we do that? Can we sit with our differences and just know that the thing that is most important is doing God's work? And that means feeding people that need to be fed. That means clothing people that need to be clothed. That means helping your neighbor. Do we have the faith to take that first? And our egos and our pride second? Or does Jesus need to knock us all on our butts? Would you pray with me? Gracious and loving God, help us to know the faith. Help us to have strong faith. Help us to see the blessings in our life that prove that love does triumph over any type of hatred or evil or violence. Help us to remember that we are carriers of that message. Help us to embrace that responsibility, to have the faith to know that we go wherever you guide us. Help us to be able to, when we hear the call, stand up and say, "Here I am. What do you want us to do?" Help us to love you, to love ourselves, and to love our neighbor. In Jesus' name, amen.